Whoever has ears ought to hear the gospel of the Lord. Whoever has ears ought to hear. It's a fairly long gospel we have on this 16th Sunday in ordinary time. But there's no need for a long explanation of what the parables mean. Don't get hopeful, I'm not going to stop talking right away. But no need for great explanation, because the Lord explains rather clearly, exactly what he means by the parables. And listening to the first parable and his explanation could be a bit negative, if you will, because he speaks of the enemy. He speaks of the enemy coming in the midst of night, slyly perhaps, when people are asleep, and planting the bad seeds, the seeds for the weeds, and then allowing them to grow. And he speaks of the end. And he will gather up the weeds and they'll be thrown into the fire. He speaks of evil deeds. He speaks of the devil. He speaks indeed of hell. Very hard for one to deny that these things exist. They listen to Jesus in this parable and his explanation of the parable. The devil exists. Hell exists. There is evil in the world. There are weeds which grow up in our midst, and all too frequently all around us. Very negative, in a sense. We ignore it at our peril. Jesus speaks to us and he warns us of the devil. He warns us of his presence in our midst. He warns us of the evils of temptation. We need to be on our guard. But it would be a shame to leave the parables that way, because that's not all the parables tell us. He goes on, first of all, with the first parable to speak of the good seed that survives and thrives. And then goes on to illustrate that same theme with two more parables about the mustard seed, the smallest seed of all, and how when planted it grows to produce the greatest bush of all, in which the birds of the air could come and find shelter and so forth. And it speaks of the yeast, the small grain of wheat which makes the bread rise, and so forth. The beautiful parables which tell us of the power of God's kingdom and his grace in our midst. Evil's in the world, and it comes to us slyly when we least expect, in the midst of night. But so does God's power and his grace, and it lives in each one of us. And we're challenged to believe that and to let it thrive and to let it grow. I'm going to quote, just hopefully briefly, from Peter Crefton. He writes of that mustard seed, if you will, the seed of grace. And it says that Sinclair Lewis, he quotes him, as saying that he called Christianity a good infection, a good analogy, Kreff says, because it teaches us many things, several things, about our faith, about the seed that has been planted in each of our hearts at our baptism. He says, first, Christianity is not an ism, but an entity. No one believes in Christianism as they might believe in Marxism or Platonism or Buddhism or atheism or capitalism. Christianity is as concrete as a virus. And we know what a virus is. We've experienced it. We've been through the pandemic and so forth. But this is a good virus, if you will. A good infection, as Sinclair Lewis says it. And secondly, like a virus, Christianity is invisible to the naked eye, but it is visible through the microscope of faith. Our Christianity is highly infectious. It spreads by contact, all kinds of contact. Physical contact, in our deeds, mental contact, in words, emotional contact, in empathy, moral contact, in good example, and aesthetic contact, in good art, literature, music. Ideologies are taught, but infections are caught. And our Christian faith is meant to be contagious. It's meant to be caught. Christianity grows because it's alive and grows very quickly and powerfully when allowed to. From a tiny thing like a mustard seed to a great global thing. It is a global pandemic. And history tells us that. That seed planted in a far distant land, 2,000 plus years ago, has spread throughout the world. Christianity changes every part of your life and mine. Nothing is safe from it. It's wild, not tame. It's a lion, not a kitten. And it's dangerous to our comfort zones. Christianity has no limit. It expands forever. Wherever a space is made for it, it is a fire. We celebrate our Christianity. The seeds of faith that have been planted in our hearts. We have been baptized. We have received the seed. Our challenge is simply to make it grow. We need to be aware of the dangers. They're out there, and they're great. But our faith, our commitment, God's kingdom, which rests in our hearts, is stronger. It's been around forever, and it will be around forever. It will triumph, and we're part of it. With all of our shortcomings and failings, our God has invited us to share in His own life. We but need to dare to believe, to dare to trust, to dare to love. We gather at the Lord's table, remembering Him in the breaking of the bread. Be aware, there are those who are planting evil seeds and weeds in our midst. We know it's out there. We know it's around us. But God lives in our hearts and in our lives, and He is stronger. All we need to do is believe, trust, and love.